what yoga in the broadest sense can do for an individual, and which is what we're going to really dive into in a deep way on the Four Yogas retreat, is to go, okay, well, I'm a householder. I'm not going to be a renunciate. Like maybe a renunciate can go and do 6 hours of meditation per day, and maybe that's going to make them, a fantastically enlightened being, or maybe that's just going to create as much self-deception as 30 minutes of meditation. I don't know what 6 hours a day is going to do. But as a householder, I can't do 6 hours of meditation per day. What can I do? I can change the way that I view my householder activities, and I can use my householder activities as a place for me to manifest my spirituality. Hey, it's David. Welcome back to the channel. Kailash Ashram is a traditional meditation and yoga retreat. I'm an army veteran turned meditator, yogin, and we love to share heartfelt, soulful content on this channel to help uplift you and demystify the path of yoga. Tonight's sharing comes from our weekly live series where we tackle questions and prompts from our community who are interested in deepening their journey with meditation and yoga. If you're keen to get started with the meditation and the yoga that's changed ours and hundreds of other people's lives, please check out the links in the description. There's plenty of resources to get you started. We'd love to see you out here on retreat sometime. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Para Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Real sense of gratitude to everybody for tuning in. Rajni started my day with gratitude in bed, which was like the first time that I recall that happening in a very conscious way, or maybe the first time that I was aware that Rajni had shared that. But there's a lot to be thankful for. And this whole path of yoga can often feel like a bit of a trudge, and well, Rajni and I are not spared from this. The path of gratitude is something that pulls us back to the heart and back to the soul very, very quickly. I mean, it is a virtue of our deepest self. We can't be grateful unless we're appraising some immaterial thing. What is gratitude? We don't. You can't buy gratitude. You can't contrive gratitude. It's a feeling, and as we've shared many times before, that it's the feminine, or those inner feelings, that guide the way towards the soul. And so simple practice of gratitude can be, or the practice of gratitude can be something that begins as a bit of a contrived thing, but then it really does spontaneously arise from within. So I just want to let everybody know that we're very appreciative of your connection to us and showing up. It instills faith in our own undertaking to share and persist with this crazy journey. We're kind of jumping back on the horse this week. First retreat in 6 months. So that's pretty crazy. It's the longest gap that we've had. We're starting, I think, it's on Thursday, so a couple of days' time. Unfortunately, we've had a few last minute pullouts. So we're down to about 6 souls who are joining us. So there's plenty of space if anyone's available, but it's also potentially a really nice, intimate container for Rajni and I to take those people who are interested in progressing some of these teachings to a new layer, in person. Many of the ideas that we will share, many of the practices we will share on the retreat are things that we talk about every week, things that are, in our writings, in our sharings, in everything that we do. But there's something magical that happens when we're in physical proximity, because the real need of what those students who are coming to learn, that receptivity is what draws out of Rajni and I from the vast amount of, well, not vast, from the small amount of knowledge that we have out of a vast tradition. It's the, as they say, it's the sucking action of the baby that stimulates the mother to produce milk. Interesting point on that I did learn about breastfeeding when witnessing Rajni go through that it actually upregulates the milk production. So if you give a baby a pacifier, that sucking action upregulates it. So you give a baby a pacifier or a dummy, the mother's breast is actually missing out on that sucking action, and then her breast supply of milk can often be diminished. And everything has its place. Certainly not chastising anyone for using a dummy, but it, who would have thought nature is a pretty smart, interconnected thing, and that receptivity and the need on the physical level of the baby is what allows the mother, who is the Shakti, the life-giving, life force-giving cow that feeds the baby and keeps it alive. But it's the baby's desire that works in tandem with the mother's charity. And so that's something that can arise very spontaneously or quite naturally in a physical proximity, because people, when the bodies are in the same room, it can be a little bit easier to feel that kind of that closeness. But I will make available, I'm aware it's been a while, but I'm just throwing it over to you guys. Is there anything that you want me to speak to, or do you have any questions? And if you don't feel confident unmuting yourself or raising your hand on the screen and putting a video on, which would be the, if you've got a question and you want me to see you, then that will be an awesome way to do it. Other way to do it, you can throw it into the chat box if you don't feel comfortable chucking the video on. Right, well, the one question that Rajni prompted me with this afternoon, in light of everybody's deafening silence, was the interface of the yogic practices and household life, which is something that, Rajni and I need to remind ourselves we are householders. Well, we don't get, we can't get too far in the day of thinking that we're a monk. We've got young children, and there's nothing quite like that to remind you of the worldly duties. Yes, that was Rajni's question. How to keep a balance between spirituality and daily household life. Oh, we've got Jane. Yeah, the giver and the receiver. Okay, yeah, certainly. So the relationship between giver and receiver, it's okay. Which way are we going to tackle this from? The archetypal giving and receiving, when we follow the thread all the way back to its point of origin, is, if we look at a biological reality, we have a male and a female, and the male is the phallus, and the linga, or the woman has the yoni or the womb, and one goes in to the other. And so on a very sort of gross physical level, this dynamic or this polarity is required for what? The procreation of life. So the procreation of that, the union of the giver and the receiver, is the unity that is the body. And so we, when we're falsely identified with the body as a consequence of that union, that's where we tend to suffer through life. So consciousness inhabits this body, which is a product of duality, but its true nature isn't divided. It isn't, that male or female were either that gave rise to being. We look at, well, okay, the male and the female body, even in an evolutionary sense, emerged out of a backdrop of interconnected nature. And, so there were monkeys and other animals, and trace things back to the oceans and the various marine creatures and whatnot. And we still get stuck on this kind of interdependent relating of give and take, on the physical plane. The most ancient philosophy, the most, I think on planet Earth, and certainly in the Indic tradition, is Sankhya. And Sankhya divides all of creation between Purusha and Prakriti. And Prakriti is nature, and its nature is that it is divided and it will continue to divide. That's kind of what she does. Purush is the soul. It's consciousness, it's awareness. And so in the philosophy of Sankhya, there is a distinction between those two. You have, the masculine soul and then feminine nature. All of this experience being presented to the soul, to our awareness. And that holds very intuitively kind of true. Like when you're sitting and you perceive, or you even just intellectually, we say, I'm not the body and I'm not the mind. Well, what can I perceive? I can perceive, the floor, the screen, the stuff in front of me. I can perceive the auditory phenomena coming through the ears. I can perceive the eye seeing. I can see something, but I can also perceive the eye seeing. How interesting. So I can perceive the eye seeing, but I can also perceive the mind having thoughts about the eye seeing. Isn't it funny? Isn't it cool? Isn't it peculiar that the eye can see? Well, that's a very different thing than the physiological light entering into the eye. And so we can use this process. This is actually a Vedantic method of inquiry called Drigdrishya Viveka, where we utilize the mind by paying close attention to one of the sensory apparatus, and then paying attention to the mind witnessing the mind's relationship to that sense. And then we bring ourselves very logically to that highest plane of, well, what is actually perceiving the mind? What is witnessing any of this? Wow, this I'm sort of encroaching or embarking into a realm of the ineffable. I can't really describe what it is to witness my mind thinking about my eye watching something. And so you go, okay, well, is there any witnessing of the witness that I can do? And this is where the mind actually kind of self-terminates, because it can't grasp the thing that's higher. So intellectually, we can't get into that space. But we move ourselves into the highest plane of receptivity that there is, which is actually awareness. It is witness consciousness. We call it Atman in the yogic tradition. In Vedanta, it's a Sakshi or witness consciousness. And its function is only one thing, as the perceiver. And so yogic methods, practices, sadhana, are designed to arrive or help us arrive at a particular destination. We're trying to cultivate or build something through our sadhana. And fundamentally, that is to be able to rest with that awareness. And if we are rested with that awareness in a meditative sense, then we can have a really pleasurable, nice meditation, a meditation where we feel like this is actually kind of the best thing for me to be doing right now, rather than it being maybe a laborious chore, which meditation certainly can feel like if you're not resting in witness consciousness. If you are resting or restlessly turbulent in mind and identified with your mind, when you will sit for a meditation, you will sit in a place of, holy fuck, how do I control this thing? Is it ever going to be over? Like, what do I need to do to make this easier? Well, we relegate and allow the mind to be turbulent, and the process of or of increasingly becoming aware of witness consciousness is something that comes through fundamentally in our path, grace, by surrender, by non-doing. You don't actually do anything. And so this is like the highest form of receptivity there is. So you just sit back and absorb the entire cosmos into you. Now, where things get tricky, being that kind of ultimate receiver, is when we begin to be when we try to judge or sift those things that we want to come in or we want to repel. And those are our likes or our dislikes, our raga, dvesha. So raga is like, dvesha is dislike. So we either want something, I'd like those pleasurable experiences, I want to be massaged, I want to have sensual pleasure of different tastes in my mouth. And I don't want the baby screaming, and I don't want the neighbor next door using their mulcher. Push those away, pull these in. And when we get caught by that, well, what sort of receiver are we? We're being a real fussy kind of receiver. We're not allowing everything to come into us. And so, he who kind of allows, or she, like it's an arbitrary he or she here, because we're touching into the place of soul. But when one has let go of likes and dislikes and turns themselves into that canvas that soaks up all of the paint of life, well, this is associated with a sense of peace and oftentimes a reminder of one's deeper essence. And this is why, even like 30 minutes might be enough for some people in this particular tradition to restore that connection to something that gives them spiritual nourishment from within. It's interesting, like right before this I was checking the emails and, no disrespect to this person, maybe I meet them one day, but they kind of came via email asking, they'd love to come out and check out the ashram, and my attitude was like, well, we don't really just let people come and check out the space. It's like, if you want to learn about it, go onto the website. If you want to join us on a retreat, come here as a student, And then I got the essay back, and it's like, I'm a monk in this Theravadan Buddhist tradition, and I don't really need to eat much. I just want to come and meditate for 6 hours a day, and I'm not really interested in any beginner sort of stuff because it'll break my mindfulness. And I could see okay, here's someone who takes their spiritual sadhana very, very seriously. They meditate for 6 hours a day. But they were concerned that being taught beginner's meditation, which is what they had assumed I would teach them if I lumped them in on the soul retreat, that would break their mindfulness. And, I don't really want to, my shtick is not hanging crap on other people, but I'm using this as a case study, as Rajni would say, about a specific temperament that can come alive when people are engaged in a spiritual practice, especially from a more renunciate place. Now, what do I see when I take myself to a place of soul from this person is somebody seeking. And so I think immediately to myself, well, 6 hours of meditation a day and you're still bouncing around wanting to try out different stuff and go other places, like, has the fruit of that, what is the fruit of that practice for this person? And all of this meditation and sitting for 6 hours of meditation a day and openly identifying as a monk, and so much ego that they can't humble themselves to come through the front door like everybody else. Is this practice working for this person, or has the spiritual practice that they've been engaged with facilitated or exacerbated their ego? and like, I know Rajni and I tend to get used to give people different sorts of reflections, and sometimes it's to pop a bubble or two, and I'll be very, very polite. But if I took that attitude towards Sundernath, so Shandor, my Hatha Yoga guru, I know immediately the first thing that he would say is, you have no respect. You show disrespect towards me by wanting not coming here as a student, and you show disrespect to your own tradition because you're dabbling with something else now, and you show just disrespect to your own self because you haven't taken with sacredness what has actually been given. And so, he actually says that sort of stuff to people, definitely ruffles a few feathers. I mean, I'm not like that, and I'm saying this in a metaphorical sense to, my kin here who are, I'm trying to elucidate a point that's still kind of being birthed, I suppose. But don't be looking towards somebody in robes and thinking to yourself, wow, they've arrived. There are a lot of hung up, neurotic monks, yoga teachers, people who do this stuff full time, who are no further along the path than your neighbor. And there are plenty of people, more than you would ever imagine, who will die as an enlightened being, fully realized, who have found that connection within and die in peace and have no impact on the material world from that plane of being a somebody in the spiritual scene. It's quite interesting. Vivekananda, the great Indian saint, said that that Christ and the Buddhas and Ramakrishna, Swamijis, these people, and I would say Vivekananda himself, though he wasn't so prideful to speak that highly of himself, he was very, very humble man. But these great saints aren't actually they're just a conduit for energies that have been contributed to by who? By the householder, by the average person in society. So, to kind of unpack, well, how does the householder contribute to the greatness of Christ's spirituality? Well, every single gesture we make of forgiveness, and it might be some horrible thing, it might be a minor dispute with the neighbor. For thousands of years, humans had to work through these virtues. Now, consciousness is not located in time nor in space. Awareness is all pervasive. It's everywhere and nowhere. And so when you direct your awareness into a realm of forgiveness, you're not just experiencing forgiveness inside of your own heart, but you're feeding that virtue into the collective consciousness. Paramatma is perceiving that. And you're subtly raising the vibration of the entire planet. And so then, descend these great yoga purush or the yogis of the age, or the man or the woman of the age who comes and is a crystallization of what has been built. And those crystallizations are what we venerate as saints or gurus. And we look to them with great reverence, but we don't see, because we get caught at the body level so easily, we don't see hidden behind them other hundreds of millions of people who've had to battle out a householder's existence to create those virtues for Christ to channel. And you think, well, what else does the householder contribute to our collective? Well, in the Indic tradition, where you've got renunciates, or those people who are giving up of their worldly life, their duties to marry, have kids, to have a job, and they become a wandering ascetic, begging for alms and food. They don't transact with money. Everything is, they're removed from society. Well, if everybody did that, would society function? No, it wouldn't. They're not trying to set a utopian ideal by doing that. they are deliberately using that sadhana as a way to efface their own ego and also to engage in the practices that they need to. And who is it that funds and gives the money and the food to the monks to enable them to worship and pray and meditate and wander around and indulge their spiritual fantasies? It's the householder who coughs up the bill. And so really the householder is the backbone of our society. And, Rajni and I have got kids, we've got an economic reality that we live in. We have duties to take kids to kindergarten and the swimming pool. And what yoga in the broadest sense can do for an individual, and which is what we're going to really dive into in a deep way on the Four Yogas retreat, is to go, okay, well, I'm a householder. I'm not going to be a renunciate. Like, maybe a renunciate can go and do 6 hours of meditation per day, and maybe that's going to make them, a fantastically enlightened being, or maybe that's just going to create as much self-deception as 30 minutes of meditation. I don't know what 6 hours a day is going to do. But as a householder, I can't do 6 hours of meditation per day. What can I do? I can change the way that I view my householder activities, and I can use my householder activities as a place for me to manifest my spirituality. And this is where we see in the bhakti sense, as a devotee, particularly love Krishna, we can then choose to serve Krishna inside of my wife, Krishna inside of my wife, Krishna inside of my son, Krishna inside of the builders who were just here, or Krishna inside of the attendant at the swimming pool. We make that choice as someone who is a bhakti yogi, someone on that path to change our mind and then work upon seeing the divine, our beloved divine, in everybody. And so, sounds easy. It's a different thing, like sit down if you have a connection to, the divine in one way, shape, form, or the other, and think to yourself, okay, well, today, just for an experiment, I love Jesus. I'm going to see Jesus inside of every single person that I come across, and report back in at the end of the day how many people you actually saw. And I think you'd be doing well if you got more than 3% of the people. It's really, really difficult to sustain the awareness of the beloved through our worldly difficulties. This is why people go on the renunciate path. It's because they extricate themselves from all of those attachments so that they can be present with awareness, soul, God. And it comes actually easier. It's much more difficult to sustain this in a householder's reality. The great thing for us householders is that some of the greatest saints and greatest figures in spiritual history, Krishna himself was a householder. Most of the Nath gurus who were householders, like they had lives. Many of the Tibetan yogis and gurus were householders with worldly duties, running farms, teaching people, having wife and kids. So, linking that back in with the giving and the receiving, bhakti is a path where we, or that polarity of giving and receiving is something that is extant. It exists in us always. So, in a meditative sense of saying, well, we sit down, we turn ourselves to become the receiver of all phenomena, including bodily sensation, mental experiences, thoughts, the awareness of our awareness. We receive all of that into us. Then, in that sense of when we have received all of everything into us, we recognize, well, what is the nature of that us, that collective inner self that we are a part of? It is not just the receiver of all of this external things, it is also the creator. And this is where we sit with our own divinity too. So this is non-duality, this is Advaita Vedanta, this is the yoga of the Nath Sampradaya as well, which is a non-dual yogic tradition. This is what we mean by non-dual. We don't, some people call it monism, which mon is one, so it's kind of a one-centered reality. I like non-duality because there is a perception that we are the receiver. There's a perception we're the godly creator, but the truth is that we're something indescribable, and we're both and we're none. And when you feel that come alive inside of you, our divinity and our humanity rest with each other. And that's accompanied with a sense of peace. There's a lack of striving or effort. There's no place to go. 6 hours of meditation, 30 seconds of meditation, that one undivided reality is present through both. And so, like pride comes before the fall, and, maybe this individual will come out to the ashram and I will enforce that they have to sit through meditation 101 with all of the other people coming into the practice that we share for the first time. Because as far as I can tell, this is an identified Theravadan Buddhas, their perception of meditation is as an activity, a doing. Our perception of meditation is just a simple recognition of your being. There's no method. And that may well be a very confronting message for someone who has so much sunk energy into specific sadhana. And this is why we say, I honestly feel that the people who get more from the practices that Rajni and I share are people who don't have too many preconceived ideas of what these things are. There's less stuff in there to have to kind of budge out. And those people who are not drawn to us or who look at us and think that their Buddhism answers more questions than it poses, well, they've found solace and refuge in their teachings. And typically the more spiritually mature or wise that we become, the less we seek elsewhere for that thing, and we start going a little bit deeper with what it is that has come our way and has resonated. We trust ourselves, we trust our experience, and we trust the guide. And so, I pray that this week ahead you get the ability to sit as the receiver, perceive those experiences, receive them into you, but also see that you are the creator, you are the generator, you are the phallus, you are also the linga. That is, you've created yourself. Ain't no one else created you. We are the self-created one. Why? Well, this is why we live our life, to work that one out. And I'm blessed that each day, I get to find out a little bit more about why I've created myself. And apparently tonight it was to share with you all. I may ask you if you like to join for meditation. We'll get set in a moment. Rajni and the kids have been a bit sick, and I've dodged it, fingers crossed, to this stage. So if during the meditation at all, you can offer a prayer of well wishes for Rajni and the kids, that would be absolutely divine. I know a lot of you have got a lot of love for those guys as well. So, please feel free to extend that to them. And we shall see you when we see you. Possibly, I guess next week. We finish the retreat on Monday. We'll be back online for session on Tuesday. Stay tuned for those morning meditators as well. We'll let you know what we're doing. We'll let you know what we're doing in the morning regarding the live meditation throughout the retreat. We might be adjusting it to 7 o'clock or thereabouts. I say Jai Up Meshwar, let's sit for a lovely meditation. Much love, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in this week. If this content has been useful for you, please consider subscribing and sharing, or dropping us a comment and letting us know what you would like to speak to next week. If you'd like to keep learning about the traditions that we're connected to, please click through on some of those resources. Links are in the description. Jai Up Meshwar.